Good evening, councillors, officers and members of the public. Welcome to the Wednesday 17th of May 2023 Development Assessment Committee meeting. I will now open the meeting, calling with the President and apologies. I'm pleased to confirm that all councillors are in attendance, with Councillor Berry attending online. Apologies from the CEO tonight, who is unable to attend the meeting, who is unwell. I'd like to confirm that in accordance with Mirrabul Shire Council's governance rules, the council will be recording and live streaming this meeting. Items 4 and 5 are confirmation of the minutes and matters arising from the previous minutes. Councillors, are there any matters arising from the previous minutes? We'll now move to the confirmation of the previous minutes. Do I have a councillor to move that the minutes of the previous meeting be confirmed? Councillor Minari, seconded Councillor Sullivan. All in favour? Carried. Item 6, disclosure of conflicts of interest. Councillor, does anyone have a conflict of interest to declare? No? Thank you. Item 7 is the community planning reports, and item 7.1, the first report is on the use and development of a dwelling at Crown Allotment 35, Stone Hut Lane, Balan. Councillors, we too have two registered speakers to this item. I'd like to invite Leah Clark from Inception Planning, who's registered to speak. Ms Clark, please take the chair, turn on your microphone. You have the floor for 3 minutes, after which councillors may ask you clarifying questions if required. Thank you. The floor is yours.
Hi, through you, Mr Mayor. Thank you, everyone, for the opportunity to speak tonight. I'm Leah, the Managing Director of Inception Planning, and we're really happy to be here tonight to advocate on behalf of our clients, Julie and Rob, for the use and development of a 5-bedroom homestead dwelling at this property. Julie and Rob are here tonight, and you'll hear from them directly. They've been farming alpacas for approximately 6 years, and in 2020 they ventured into importing and inbreed Valais black-nosed sheep. They've commenced farming of the land, and their intentions is to live on site to further increase their versatility of the farm. Whilst the subject site consists of 2 titles, we're only applying to build on allotment 35, which has an overall area of just over 30 hectares. That's 10 hectares shy of the 40 hectare requirement for an as-of-right use of a dwelling. Consolidations of the titles is not viable for our clients and comes with a number of concerns financially, should they be forced down this path. The dwelling, proposed to be set back 40 metres from Fishcotts Lane, is to be strategically sited amongst the other supporting agricultural infrastructure, ensuring the remaining of the land is maximised for the ongoing farming use. The supporting farm management plan clearly outlines how the land is intended to be managed. We say the proposal strongly supports the purpose of the farming zone by supporting a productive agricultural use that requires 24-hour monitoring of the sheep through the breeding stages. The birthing of these animals requires considerable attention all year round, as they are not seasonable breeders. The surveillance is also required, given the cost associated with the breed. The submission to Council was supported by a comprehensive farm management plan that was designed to provide a level of comfort to Council on the sustainable practices to be undertaken on a day-to-day basis to ensure the farm is viable into the future. Supporting the farming activity with the ability to live on site will only increase the productivity of the agricultural enterprise, which is supported by clause 1401.1 of the protection of agricultural land at both state and local policy. Council's rural growth policy highlights the subject site is located within the area zone in MAP 1. The policy encourages dwellings to be located on lots with a minimum lot size of 8 hectares. As already highlighted, the subject site well exceeds this minimum site area. Council's rural housing policy encourages decision-making that supports the agricultural sector so that it can be more productive, diverse, resilient and adaptive. When we say the landowners will positively contribute to the community, bringing a unique breed of sheep that is not commonly found within Victoria. In closing, it seems premature to refuse the application on the basis of proliferation of dwellings in the farming zone, when one dwelling would be as of right on this land if the client had sought to consolidate titles. The adjoining lot, which measures 26.55 hectares, would trigger planning approval for the future use of a dwelling. It would be at this time that council would be assessing if further dwellings would cause the proliferation of dwellings. Planning officers have not refused the application on the provision that the use and development of a dwelling would compromise the continued agricultural use of the land. This is a pleasing outcome. It is for these reasons outlined in our written planning submission, along with our oral submission tonight, that we respectfully request councillors put forward alternative recommendation and support this proposal subject to appropriate conditions. I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Ms Clark. Councillors, do you have any questions for Ms Clark? No? Thank you, Ms Clark.
Thank you.
Councillors, we have a second registered speaker for this item. Julie DeCourt has registered to speak to this item. Julie, please feel free to take the table, turn on the microphone. You have 3 minutes to address the councillors, and councillors may choose to ask you some clarifying questions following your address. Thank you.
Good evening. My name's Julie DeCourt. Firstly, thank you for the opportunity to be able to speak tonight. I'd also like to thank Councillors Minari, Dudzik and Berry for taking the time to come and visit our farm and see firsthand our vision. My husband Robert and I are excited to be involved in the importing and breeding of Valais Black-Nosed sheep. Valais Black-Nosed sheep are a new sheep to Australia, and we are a major breeder in the introduction of this beautiful, friendly breed. As well as having Valais on the ground, we are importing semen and embryos to ensure the diversity in genetics and sustainability of the breed in Australia. We searched extensively for a location to breed Valais. We needed an area with quality soil, high precipitation, cooler climate, undulating ground, in a safe and secure area with limited traffic access. Coldbrook met the criteria, and it's proven to excel in the cooler temperatures and rainfall. The question's been asked why we require a house on our farm. Why can't we just check our animals and live away from the farm? The short answer is that we've tried this whilst breeding alpacas for 6 years, and it's not sustainable. We initially had a 20-acre holding in Burrumbeet and another 6 acres in Miners Rest. We used surveillance cameras to keep an eye on our stock, in addition to daily on-site checks. The cameras were good for a quick head count and to alert if someone was on the land, but did not allow a complete view, so it proved to be very costly in time travelling to and from the properties. Many a night we were rugging up to check on an unwell animal or making 2-hourly trips to feed a newborn alpaca who was too weak and needed a hand. With both our alpacas and Valais, we're aiming to breed quality animals. We've been using embryo transfers and AI to assist in this process. Alpacas and Valais are not seasonal breeders, and this means we could be birthing at any time in the year. We work hard to have well-handled animals, and to achieve this, we need to be interacting with the animals on a daily basis to maintain trust. This is part of the attraction with both the alpacas and the Valais. Part of our vision is a holistic sales presence where people gain education about the breeds when they purchase on-site. And we're also looking at the potential of a tourism venture in the future, attracting people to the area. Picture high tea with the Valais or alpaca treks. Other reasons we need to be on site is that we've already been broken into at the Coldbrook farm and had over $30,000 worth of equipment stolen. This was whilst we had visible security cameras on the farm. We believe an on-site presence will deter an opportunistic thief. Working on our property to control weeds, improve pasture and care for animals is not a part-time job, as any farmers can appreciate. It's also worth mentioning we currently have 2 neighbouring properties who have houses built on 70 acres parcels of land. And finally, we're very aware of the power lines being built close to our property and fully support the community in rallying against these being built. We have stunning flora and fauna in the nearby Wombat State Forest and need to protect the environment we're lucky enough to have. Thank you.
Thank you, Julie. Councillors, do you have any questions for Julie? No? Thank you, Julie. Thank you very much. Councillors, you have a recommendation in the papers before you regarding the report. You also have an alternate motion provided in the paperwork to you on this item. Do I have a councillor to move the alternate motion?
I'd like to move the alternate motion to approve the permit.
Moved, Councillor Dudzik. Do I have a councillor to second the motion? Councillor Minari. Councillors, any dissent? Councillor Edwards.
I object, Mr Mayor.
Councillor Dudzik, as the mover of the motion, I invite you to speak first in favour.
It was my absolute pleasure to visit this property a couple of days ago and meet the sheep and the alpacas, and they have an incredible amount of stock on their property with high needs. I would say this is niche farming. Posh farming is what I said, and I actually saw it. It's absolutely beautiful, and the girls are absolutely beautiful. I'm referring to the alpacas. I can fully understand why the applicant wants to live on the land, and I can fully understand the need, because there's so much to do with so many animals. They're very expensive animals. They take a lot of care, and they deserve to be pampered.
Thank you, Councillor Dudzik. Councillor Edwards.
Yeah, thanks, Mr Mayor. So, if we have a look at the officer's recommendations and the requirements, and one thing that really stood out for me is the proliferation of dwellings in the farming zone. This is not uncommon for us to have applications like this in front of us, but what's the first order of effect of that? First order of effect is that we have inflated land values in high value farming areas. So people start to think that, well, we've allowed one property, we'll allow another one, so the values of the land goes up. What's the second order effect of that? We have an increase in rate values. What's the third order of that? We have a loss of farming because it becomes rural residential because farmers can't afford to buy the land there. So I think that is the reason we should seriously give consideration to the matter before us tonight.
Thank you, Councillor Edwards. Councillor Murray, as a seconder, would you like to speak on the motion?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. This is only the second breeder of Valet black-nosed sheep that I've met in the whole of Australia. And I was very impressed when I visited last week. I think we should be definitely supporting small businesses in Moorabool if they want to give it a good hard crack. Boutique farming should be encouraged because we live in a peri-urban council. We're on the fringe. That's going to happen. I can see, obviously there was a precedent set over the last quite a few years in this meeting to allow other neighbours to build their houses on the 70 acres that surround them. And so I feel that that's quite a challenging thing to argue when you already have two neighbours on the exact same size properties living there and breeding their cattle. These people are serious. They're passionate and they're serious about what they want to do on their property. And I get that. Yes, it's a different way of farming, but they're genuine. I also understand their stresses with transmission lines. You know, we've been fighting that for 3 years now and it's not going away. And that's something that brings people to their knees. So I do support this alternate, and I love that it also promotes tourism in Moorabool, because that's what we were talking about last night at the Bland Chamber of Commerce dinner. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Minari. Councillors, would anyone else like to speak on the motion? Councillor Tatchell? Councillor Berrien will be next.
Yeah, thanks, Mr Mayor. I mean, obviously, the complication within this is generally you would adjoin the two titles too, and then you'd have an as a right, which is normal. And there was no mention within either the alternate motion or the report that a 173 agreement could be drawn up, which would appease Councillor Edwards' issue in terms of his argument. But I totally support Ali's argument in terms of this is where we're at. I mean, if we think the horse hasn't bolted, it's on its third lap. You know, the reality is that the future of a lot of Moorabool and Broadacre farming is still up in the air. I mean, it's being reduced every year, and we have to find a solution. And if we don't do boutique farming, I know this sounds like I'm totally for it, but if we don't do boutique farming, we could run the risk of just having a lot of land that is going to be infested with weeds because we don't have a use for it. And once an area like Stonehart Lane, where it's already been, there's already been housing implemented all the way along Stonehart Lane, they're all small blocks. And there'll be more of it in Coldbrook as it comes forward towards Balan and heads back towards Blackpool and Blackwood. The big issue here is that I know we're fighting tooth and nail for this rural plan, because I think it will once and for all stop these discussions in council where we're caught between the legislation and what is sensible or common sense in terms of practicalities of boutique farming. So until we get that, we're basically continuing to run the gauntlet. Now, I note in this particular case that there's been no objections. Well, that's always a great start, because at least we know that the people that are in that region are not uncomfortable with it. So, but without that document, we're always going to be faced with this problem. And we tend to get one of these at every DAC now. And I appreciate the fact that it puts our planners under pressure. It utilises a lot of staff, because the planners are stuck between the legislation and the deep blue sea. And then we have the people that live in the area where we've got to make a decision via an alternative. And we don't always get it right. I mean, and we've seen many cases in the last 2 years anyway, where we've had a terrific farming plan put on the table, and then blow me down the next day there's a for sale sign on the property in good farming country that's just going to become housing. And this is the quandary. This is the thing we face. And I know that it was only a week ago the VWF came in here, well, the president of VWF, and basically said, well, look, the future of farming in rural, we have to be really careful when we cut up and put houses on land and make small boutique farms, so we don't affect the overall food bowl in terms of how we function. So, whilst, and look, I do this as well, I truly understand that when you have stock, and we obviously have stock at our place, if you didn't have a house there, I mean, there's no way known you could look after camels and cows without being there, because animals have a way of just getting themselves into trouble. And you do become the custodian of those animals, and even horses. I mean, anyone who ever's owned horses, you spend half your life pulling them out of fences. And it's anyone of the vet's on his second Porsche. But anyhow, but that's the lifestyle you choose. And I think we'll see a lot more of that in Moorabool, where people are attracted to that lifestyle of lifestyle farming. And we've got another one after this tonight too that's very similar. And so, for my money, I am torn on this, but, you have to take people at face value. And if worse came to worse and we were at a tie on this, I'd recommend maybe a 173 agreement on the other land that could always be removed based on the people that surround that land. So, but look, I admire people that do this stuff, because you certainly don't do it for the money. So, yeah, thank you, Mr Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Tatchell. Councillor Berry.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Sort of following on from Councillor Tatchell, I actually had two noted. There was no objections, and often in these farming areas we do have that situation. Where this farm is, I had the, as announced, I was able to go out and visit the property. And I don't think it's a situation where they're going to start farming and this family's then going to sell, hoping for development. They've spent a lot of money out there on their shed, on their breeding. Never seen a valet black-nosed sheep before, but they are absolutely beautiful. Can't imagine that they should be living out there with the alpacas as well, without being able to have their owners nearby. Both animals are very affectionate. Although I'm not an animal person, I got close up and personal with the alpacas, and they're absolutely beautiful. And to have those breeders in our area, a little bit different for the nosed sheep, I commend the family for bringing that into our area. Just adds to, so we're talking earlier about our farmers have reduced to 400 in the area. Well, here we go, you've got 401 if we let this one through. Also, when you do venture down to see this farm, I can understand, and it's not a nice situation where they were robbed because it's down a small laneway off the main road. That's not a great situation either. I think these people need to be living out on their farm. What I saw, I think they're born to be farmers, and I congratulate them on attempting to bring some more farming and being able to live on the farm and advance the farm. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Berry. Would any other councillor like to speak on the matter? Thank you, Councillor Sullivan. Councillor Dudzik, as the mover of the motion, I'll invite you to close the debate.
This is business. It's economic development and tourism. I'm sure there'll be lots of people wanting to come and admire the stock on this farm. I'm absolutely positive that the applicants are planning to stay there. This is how they've recovered from COVID, and they've recovered in an amazing way with an amazing farm. And I'm envious. It's just beautiful, and I can see how much work that has been put into the property. They're not going anywhere with all that fencing, all the care that those animals get. I'm positive that they're there for many, many years to come. So I wish them all the best, and please approve the permit.
Thank you, Councillor Dudzik. We'll now put the motion to a vote. Councillors, all those in favour? Against? Councillors, I declare the motion carried. Thank you. We'll move to item 7.2 on the agenda, which is development of an extension to a building used for industry, a reduction of car parking at 53 Haddon Drive, Palan. Councillors, there is no registered speakers on this item, and no alternate motions have been received. Moved Councillor Tatchell, seconded Councillor Sullivan. Any dissent? All in favour? Carried. Councillors, item 7.3 is for the use and development of a dwelling and ancillary shed at Corries Lane, Mount Egerton. Councillors, we have two registered speakers for this item, and I again invite Leah Clark from Inception Planning to speak to the item. Again, Ms Clark, you have 3 minutes to address council, after which councillors may ask you some questions if required. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. It's me again. Should have called it the Leah Show. So I'm here to advocate on behalf of my clients Jessie and Rachel for the use and development of the dwelling in association with the growing of saffron. This is a case where the trial crop, which commenced in 2021 and was harvested in 2022, demonstrated to our clients that for this farming enterprise to be profitable, they must live on site. This is due to the size of the crop needing to increase, which in turn increases the intensity of the labour required. The subject site is formerly known as Crown Allotment 3, Section 5, and measures just over 8 hectares. Abutting the site to the north, east and west are similar size allotments, all developed with dwellings. Clause 1401-1 in the state policy encourages council to consider regional and local characteristics when assessing farming proposals. We highlight the subject site is the only allotment within the direct vicinity that is not developed with a dwelling. Therefore, the approval of a dwelling to support the agricultural activities will not remove the productive agricultural land. In fact, it will support the intensification of the agricultural activity. We have legitimate farming practices being undertaken on site currently, and question whether this is the case on adjoining sites. Strangely enough, this could be a case of reverse amenity from our clients farming their land and impacting on the residential nature of adjoining lots, which is generally what council is trying to protect when making decisions such as this one. We say the development of the land with a dwelling will respect the immediate rural character of the area as supported by clause 1501-6 of the state policy for design of rural areas. The siting of the dwelling is to be within the domestic envelope that's already created within the existing sheds, with the existing shed on site, and is placed in an area so as to not impact on other environmental qualities of the land. The Council Officer's report, which forms part of the agenda for tonight's meeting, references a recent tribunal decision that was refused on the basis of a lack of information on the design and siting of the proposed dwelling and on the scale and type of activity which required little management intervention to be successful. Our supporting plans and documentation of the intensive farming practices is what sets our proposal apart from that tribunal decision. The application is supported by the mandatory referral of authorities, which is also a positive outcome. No objections were received as part of that advertising process either. The development will support the agricultural community with an innovative farming activity that draws on the strengths of the climate, the soil and the proximity of the site to market, as per both the rural and growth housing policies. So to finish, we wish to extend our thanks to Victoria Mack for her hard work on this application. Victoria has been very supportive of the proposal and has worked hard in the background with our clients. Unfortunately, at the 11th hour, we were advised that this decision was overturned and we have ended up here tonight facing a potential refusal of the application. We acknowledge that saffron farming is an innovative farming practice that councillors have not seen before in this municipality. The boutique size, however, is appropriate given the site's context and adjoining settings, and is a clever use of a farming zone parcel of land. We acknowledge and appreciate that some of you have taken the opportunity to meet our clients at the farm to learn more about what is required to be a successful saffron farmer. We hope you enjoyed your experience and will continue to support Rachel and Jesse into the future. It is an exciting opportunity for Moorabool Shire to have their first saffron farmers who are making news headlines throughout Australia, and it is for this reason we respectfully request an alternative motion is put forward and a permit is issued subject to appropriate conditions. I'm happy to take questions.
Yep, thank you, Ms Clark. Councillors, any questions? Councillor Tatchell.
You go into tourism, Leah.
Yes, I should be, shouldn't I?
Just a couple of quick questions. I understand the complications with saffron and the delicacy of trying to create that plant. And you're in a small farm zone, and all of those areas have been cut into 8-hectare lots. So the first question is that should the farmer next door use any type of spraying or this is the problem with some of this boutique farming is when there's those fence lines in between the different types of farming, that it can create a problem for the product that you're trying to produce on yours. So that's the first question. So are we going to have a problem there?
As far as I'm aware, and instructions from my client is no. They might be able to answer some more questions about the practices that they're putting in place in terms of treating it themselves. So that's probably the best answered by my client. But as far as I'm aware, before they purchased this property, they'd done some extensive background researches as to whether this site was appropriate. So I would assume that if the money invested already for their trial crop, they'd be able to give you more background on that.
And the other question, of course, is CA2. That was another one that was done by a alternate motion here some time ago now.
This is the tribunal decision?
I'm not sure if CA2 was the tribunal. It may have been. I remember the alternate on it, but I do note that it's for sale as well. Was there and this may be a question for officers, was there a house actually built on it? Because looking at the diagram, it's fairly small.
Which side are we talking about?
Well, I think it's on it'll be on the eastern side, I think, which is probably a bit weird in Corrie's Lane.
There's dwellings on all sides. Yeah, right. I question whether farming activities are actually being undertaken. Hence why I'm saying we're actually got an instance where you've got legitimate farming practices already happening on this site and proposed to be undertaken into the future, given the investment already undertaken. I question whether that's happening in that area.
Could I have
Yes,
one more if I may?
please.
Mr. Mayor? So, and the saffron business is an interesting business.
Yeah.
And I'm trying to avoid the word eccentric because it's a complicated, difficult process, very labour intensive.
Yes.
You've got to have a passion for it. I mean, either that or you've got to be crazy. If you're not crazy, it'd certainly help.
Yeah.
So it's a very difficult thing. And I know the farm in Tasmania that was used in the video, and it's incredibly complex and very difficult to make money out of.
Yes.
And a lot of things should go wrong very quickly. So, yeah. So really, is this about lifestyle or is it?
I like you will hear from Jesse and Rachel tonight, and you will hear their passion. And if you haven't already, you need to. Councillor Tatchell is to jump online. And Jesse and Rachel are so invested in this. They've got their family invested in this, and they work this as well as their own jobs. It is a labour-intensive use, and that is why we're here tonight. They've already tried it without being there with a dwelling. They both work, and they've got the young family, but they are out there all the time. So you'll be able to hear more about the passion from both of them. This is legitimate.
Yeah, thanks.
Maybe crazy, maybe not, but
Yeah,
definitely legitimate.
I'm a little bit crazy. Thanks, Leah.
Thanks,
Thank you,
Councillor.
Councillor Tatchell. Councillors, any other questions for Leah? No? Thank you, Leah.
Thank you.
Jesse and Rachel, I invite you to also take the table to speak on the item. Again, in line with other speakers tonight, you have 3 minutes, after which councillors may avail of the opportunity to ask you questions. Thank you.
Thank you, councillors, for reviewing our application and allowing us the time to speak tonight. We are Rachel and Jesse Sherman. We are saffron farmers. We have spent over 2 years now proving to ourselves that our farm has the potential to be something very special, and now we have the chance to share it with you all. In 2021, we purchased this land after finding it had ideal conditions for saffron farming. We need the cold, frosty nights Mount Edgerton has to offer to set our flowers, and the gentle slope helps with drainage. We planted our test crop and gave it almost nothing, just the natural conditions of the land, and it thrived. We yielded 2.6 grams of saffron from just under 500 flowers, and while that might not sound like a lot, it's an incredibly high yield for saffron. This season, we've found our second year flowers are bigger and the saffron itself is substantially larger. We are a viable farm. We have the data, we have the produce. Only now that we have proven our viability have we asked to build a home on our farm, as it is vital to the success of our crop. We have now spent 2 seasons farming saffron from a distance, and we know firsthand that it is not sustainable. With this in mind, we challenge Agriculture Victoria's recommendations that we do not need to live on site. The 2007 study they referenced was conducted on a Tasmanian saffron farm, which was occupied by the owners. There is no data to support this recommendation. While saffron is quite easy to grow, it produces the most expensive spice in the world. So how can something so simple to grow rival the cost of gold? Because everything to do with saffron is done by hand. The picking, weeding, planting, counting, cleaning, everything.